Hello, I'm John Walsh. We need your help to capture this fugitive. Julio Cesar Guevara Mejia is wanted by the FBI in Sacramento for the attempted murder of a 19-year-old female in November of 2007. Police say he lured the young woman to a hotel room where he shot her 3 times in the chest. He could be in Palm Springs, California or Houston, Texas. Contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI if you have any information.
From a top-secret location, it's the spies who love me, bringing together MeTV's top super spies to fight evil at a memorable moment's notice. They're daring.
That's right.
Brave.
Now what are we gonna do?
The best we can.
Suave.
Does that apply to me, Oscar?
Possibly.
And smart.
The old finger in the gun trick.
Maxwell Smart.
MeTV Fresno, channel 43.6 and Xfinity 187.
Most watched news channel in Europe.
Hi, I'm John Malice. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this day. What a week it was for the country last week. Today it's on the air off the presses with an internet journalist that'll go over and give us a rundown of what happened last week, why, and what it means to us and the country. 436 MeTV, option 11. Back in just a moment. Glad to have you along on this Monday morning. Glad you are here. Hope you had a great weekend, and what a hot weekend it was. But we're now cooling down a little bit until we hit 109 degrees from what I understand on Wednesday. So remember, batten down the hatches, stay cool, go out in the pool and drink plenty of fluids. Hey, I'd like to remind you to watch us each and every Monday through Friday live on Comcast, channel 187, 43.6, my friends, and 13.1. And at some point, not sure when, you'll be able to clearly watch us on 8.1 as well. So that'll be 4 stations live from 10 to 11. And you can watch the replay later today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on 13.6, 8 o'clock tonight on 4.6 Biz TV, and then you can catch us on YouTube 24/7 once these shows are posted to our YouTube channel. And then you can catch me at Twitter if you want to throw me a Twitter, at John Mallows, MeTV. And today's program, I should say, is sponsored by Dr. Thomas Casagrande, 2020 Optometrics out there at Shaw and Blackstone. More than 2,000 frames to choose from. We're glad he's a sponsor here, so if you need new glasses, new frames, whatever, go out there and check him out. Hey, what a week it was for the country last week. Unforgettable week. Confederate flags falling all across the South. The rainbow flags flying all across the country. Gay marriage now legal in every state. 48 hours, 2 major landmark decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to put a picture up on the screen, show you what I'm talking about. It all happened last Friday. U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that same-sex marriage is legal in every state. The swing vote in that decision, Justice Anthony Kennedy, a conservative appointed by Ronald Reagan back in '86. Just 24 hours earlier, though, another ruling by the same court, Chief Justice John Roberts, saving Obamacare again for the second time. Roberts, a conservative appointed by George W. Bush. Decisions that changed our country maybe forever. And then the death of South Carolina Pastor Clementa Pinckney, killed in a church massacre, has changed change the way some think about the Confederate flag. In response to the killings, mass removals of the flag, including on Saturday, as a woman was arrested for climbing a flagpole to take it down in front of the South Carolina State House. Live in our studio right now is Charles C. Johnson, an internet journalist with a website called GotNews.com. It was a week, one for the history books and two major victories for President Obama. And by the way, our guest today banned from Twitter. Why? He's got the black tape over the mouth on GotNews.com. Check it out. 436-MeTV option 11. Hey, the phone line is open. Hope you can call in. A historic week. And as we start another week, wait to see what happens now. 436-MeTV option 11. Back in a moment. At 20/20 Optometric, your vision is their focus. Whether you're 5 or 65, Dr. Thomas Casagrande will get to know you, your lifestyle, and vision needs to ensure that your contacts or eyeglasses are a perfect fit and the right prescription every time. With the Valley's largest selection of eyewear, 20/20 has over 2,000 frames, including top designer brands like Coach, Tiffany, Prada, Ray-Ban, Oakley, and more. Eye exams start as low as $89, so call or stop by to schedule your appointment today.
Take a look at this. Let's play.
This is too hip for you. I'll slow it down.
Let's play.
Watch all your favorite classic game shows on Buzzer TV, KBBC Digital Channel 13.7.
Back here on the program with Charles C. Johnson, an internet journalist just returning from the East Coast. And what a week it was, Charles. You were in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, when all this went down. My goodness, including on Friday when the gay marriage issue came to pass.
Yeah, I was there for the Obamacare decision as well. It was quite an eventful week. In fact, I actually saw Ted Olson, who was the kind of conservative lawyer who was arguing in favor of gay marriage. I saw him walking from the Supreme Court House steps when I was in a cab. It's quite a week. It's going to be interesting to see what the fallout of it all is.
Hey, let's put up a picture of your guy, Ted Cruz, because what he had to say about, and I say your guy because you want him to win the seat for the White House, he said it was and I'm kind of paraphrasing now, I'm not quoting exactly. He said this was the two decisions made by the U.S. Supreme Court, two dark days in American history. Would you agree?
I would. I mean,
why?
Let's put it this way. The Obamacare ruling is going to increase health insurance costs for everyone, which is already happening here in California, especially those of us who are under 30 have had our health insurance premiums more than double.
But that decision on Thursday was to help those who can't afford to pay the full boat on their monthly premiums, so the subsidies would kick in. The government would actually help the lower income people pay those subsidies.
Right.
Pay the premiums.
Well, the purpose of those subsidies, though, is ultimately to have more government control of the health care, which is in turn going to make middle class people end up having to carry the burden of that. And I think on the gay marriage thing, I think it was working itself out perfectly fine state by state level. I worry about overreaching court decisions that sort of end federalism, because we have a federal republic, each state making its own determination on big questions. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the response is now that Vermont and Massachusetts and Connecticut all have the same policies now as Mississippi, Alabama, Hawaii, Alaska. These are very different places, very different cultures. And even if you favor gay marriage, which, you know, if a gun were put to my head, I would, just because I think marriage generally maybe not such a good idea for everyone. Even if you favor it, it's not necessarily a good idea to have a federal edict come down in a very kind of close decision, a 5-4 decision. It's not necessarily a good thing. If you look at something like abortion, we were working that issue out in the 70s, state by state. We were working out what our policies were going to be. We then had Roe v. Wade. It continues to be a source of a lot of contention in our politics to this day.
Yeah, because
a Supreme Court decision came down 7-2, which said that abortion should be legal in all states, which a lot of states object to and a lot of individuals object to.
Yeah, so it's a bone of contention for a lot of people, even to this day and age, some 40 plus years later. Put up that picture again at Anthony Kennedy, because I want to talk about these two Supreme Court justices. Anthony Kennedy, the swing vote on Friday on gay marriage. This guy is a major conservative, appointed by Ronald Reagan in '86. He's from Sacramento, California, by the way. He's been on the court for so many years. Why would he be the swing vote in gay marriage and not a swing vote, say, on Obamacare?
Well, I think the important thing to understand about Kennedy is he's sort of he likes being a gadfly. He's sort of probably more libertarian than conservative. There was a great book written a few years ago called The Tie Goes to Liberty about Kennedy's jurisprudence. And more often than not, you can see him, especially on a lot of the gay questions, especially on a lot of racial preference questions, you can see him always siding with the more libertarian side of things. So more freedom rather than less, and he interprets the gay marriage question in that framework. I think it's going to be interesting. The holding of the case is going to be fascinating because it's not clear kind of what the holding really is. Other than to legalize gay marriage everywhere, it's going to be interesting what a precedent it sets, because it means if you interpret the presumption of liberty kind of guideline of what he's talking about, then it kind of means that gun permits can be accessible across all states now, which is going to raise interesting political questions, obviously.
And so was Kennedy more conservative when he was first appointed by Reagan in '86?
I mean, the general consensus is that most of these candidates end up getting appointed, and then they sort of go more moderate as time goes on. John Roberts is a perfect example of that. My friend Ben Shapiro, it's interesting, in 2005 when Roberts was first appointed, my friend Ben Shapiro was making the argument that Roberts, when he was 21 years old, that Roberts was going to be a squish, and then he was ultimately going to betray the conservatives, and people were making fun of him at the time, and it looks like he was kind of right on the money all these years later.
So he is abandoning almost his conservative principles, right?
Well, what Robert says animates him is a conviction that we need to protect the autonomy of the court, and so his view is that you should almost always make decisions that protect the autonomy of the court, that make it so that the other branches can't politicize it or harm it in any way by cutting its funding or by arguing against it. So he's very worried about the court losing its autonomy, and so he more often than not punts issues back to the political branches.
Right, and so Roberts now, of course, twice has saved Obamacare. With that initial decision, he was the swing vote, and again on Thursday, the swing vote there. Well, have you ever seen a week like this for a U.S. president? 2 victories back to back, and maybe you could even say with the Confederate flag, that's a third victory within 2 or 3 days.
Certainly, it's certainly a good wind in the sails for President Obama, and effectively no one's opposing him on any of his agenda items. I mean, he's rather successful. Even on the trade deals, he's been largely successful in how he's framed them.
Well, he wasn't on that last vote, right?
On the last vote, no, but he's been very good at pushing and splintering the Republicans, which is sort of his point.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Let me ask 2 questions real quick, Charles. Number one, I was surprised that the Supreme Court agreed, the same marriage issue. But we're not here to judge, okay? There's only going to be one person to judge. So I'll leave it at that. The second one, what do you think about Obama singing and a funeral? I mean, even though it's a pastor and all that, I don't have nothing against it, but I think it was a political thing, okay? But those are the only 2 questions I asked. I mean, we're just going to have to let it, let the ball roll and see what happens with the same-sex marriage and all that.
Okay. Hey, good call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. We've noticed that gays and straights have different divorce rates. Gays tend to get divorced more often than straights, which is
really
interesting. Yeah, many of the trial lawyers were some of the bigger backers of gay marriage efforts in state by state. So the institutions may evolve differently, but it's going to be an interesting situation there. As for Obama, I mean, I'm kind of shocked. I'm kind of shocked that we went from a rather brutal shooting with I think 9 people killed in Charleston, South Carolina. And the first thing that people say is we need to bring down the Confederate flag. When I was down in Mississippi traveling around there last year, the young man who took me to all of the different Vicksburg Confederate memorials was a black 21-year-old kid wearing a Confederate flag shirt with my wife.
But it's a different mentality in the South than it is here.
The South is very different, and we oftentimes, just because some people see the Confederate flag as a mark of slavery, others see it as a measure of states' rights. Still, others see it as a cautionary tale that the United States could fall apart at any moment. It's interesting that we're having these fights right now because, the bodies weren't even buried, and we already had Amazon, we had already had all of eBay, all these different companies partnering together to ban Confederate items from their stores. Now, they have every right to do that, but it is interesting that you can still go buy Nazi paraphernalia on eBay, and it certainly shows...
But you can't get the Confederate flag.
Can't get the Confederate flag. And by the way, many people are manufacturing them. In fact, I'm no Johnny Rebel. My family fought on the other side on this question. But I went and bought a number of Confederate flags just because of historical purposes. I think it's kind of dangerous when we start to eliminate our history. It becomes kind of politically difficult.
Another quick call before we got to take a break here. Good morning. You're on Connect with Me. Caller, go ahead.
Well, first of all, with Obamacare, it's not a bad thing. My wife and I, we work our rear ends off, and we finally have insurance, and we can afford it. Barely, but we can afford it, and we couldn't afford it before. And so... from what he said, the middle class have to take care of, well, that's the people that we work for, so it's not fair that they can have insurance and we can't.
Caller, let me ask you a question.
And then with the gay marriage thing, all the government did was make it so that people can't push them aside and say, oh, we're not going to deal with you. What you want is wrong. Everybody has their rights.
All right, caller,
and now they're just giving them rights that everybody else has.
Good point. But caller, I want to ask you a question about Obamacare. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Is the government paying your subsidies to help you cover the monthly premiums?
Yes, part of it. Yes.
Okay. So you're on healthcare California?
The Covered California. Yes.
Covered California. Yeah. Is that right?
It's not the greatest thing in the world, but at least we can go see a doctor now. I mean, before we couldn't. And, there's either you're poor and you can have Medi-Cal and go see a doctor, or you work and you end up, in our situation where without Obamacare, we can't go see the doctor. We can't afford it. Pure and simple.
Okay, so the government is helping you pay at least half of your monthly premium, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. You think that's a good thing. All right, Charles, respond.
Well, I mean, everyone sort of always likes the government benefits that they end up getting. Excuse me. The problem is more often than not that, we've seen in California wait times have gone up. We've seen care go down. We've seen costs continue to climb. The purpose of the Affordable Care Act, as Obama first addressed it, was to make health care affordable. That has not happened. In fact, just the opposite. The rates have increased, the rate at which it's become more and more unaffordable for the average person. Now, obviously, there are going to be winners and losers in any government policy, but I would note that there are many Californians, I think something like 5 or 6 million, who had their health insurance policies canceled when the Obamacare policy went into effect. I was one of them. I liked what I had, and it seemed to work for me and my wife. But of course, now that's gone.
That went out the window. Charles C. Johnson, internet journalist, is here, just back from D.C., where a historic 2 days, I think, occurred, Thursday and Friday. Two of the most historic days in the history of our country as far as the U.S. Supreme Court is concerned. Talking about health care and then same-sex marriage. All right, 436-MeTV, option 11, time to weigh in, even on the Confederate flag. Back in a moment.
When you're looking for Whirlpool innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified Whirlpool appliances save you energy and money and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Back here on the program, I do want to roll the videotape, and I don't believe there's any sound on this. I want to talk about same-sex marriage again, because that is a hot topic here, especially in California. And of course, over the weekend, you had gay pride parades all across the country, from New York to San Francisco, and this was the decision in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday. We have a call coming in. Although the ruling guarantees the right of same-sex marriage in the Constitution. Hang on, caller, just one moment. This hardly spells the end of discrimination. Am I right, Charles?
Well, yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think discriminating or making judgments is a natural part of human behavior. Some people are going to decide that they don't like gays. Other people are going to decide they don't like straights, and this is just how the society works. And I think when the government kind of comes in and tries to make these determinations, it always gets it kind of partially right and partially wrong.
Right. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. Regarding Obamacare, I personally know, okay, it depends on which side of the fence you stand on. We live in San Joaquin Valley. We have the highest poverty rate, probably, all these unemployed farm workers. Personally, my husband's family, now their parents were born in Mexico, but the children are legal American citizens. They started working in the field at like 6, 7 years old to buy their school clothes. Couldn't get educated properly because they had no time to study because they're out working in the field.
What's your question? Because we're short on time. Caller?
And there's no
Caller? What's your question? Specific question.
With Obamacare, I personally know 3 family members before Obamacare that depended on the clinic for health care.
Okay.
Diabetes was rampant in the family. They all died. Okay? And it is much cheaper, it is much less expensive to treat someone before they get so ill that they end up in the emergency room and then have to be hospitalized,
all right.
taken in an ambulance, all that stuff.
Okay. All right, so what about that? It'll save us money from, people going into the emergency room who don't have health care insurance, and...
Yeah, there have been a number of studies sort of done on this question. It turns out having insurance isn't really a good predictor of healthcare outcomes. Generally, it's a question of how healthy the person is, and whether or not they have insurance is not really... the correlation is not causation argument kind of applies there. Now, we do have a lot of programs in the state of California. Obviously, we have Medi-Cal, we have Medicare, we have many different programs that are available to the poor, to the elderly, and those programs seem to be working just fine. The question right now is whether or not it was necessary to take over a whole chunk of the healthcare industry, which increased the costs for everybody,
right.
And whether or not that it was really necessary.
Hey, I want to play, because we had a phone call, and I encourage you to call in. I want your comments today, 436-MeTV option 11, talking about gay marriage. We're talking about Obamacare, but I want to get through this gay marriage thing. I want to roll that videotape one more time from the Supreme Court ruling on Friday, and I want to ask you, you remember 11 years ago, Gavin Newsom, at the time, he was the mayor of San Francisco, that was 11 years ago, that he said, you know what, I'm going to legalize gay marriage in San Francisco. It happened until the California Supreme Court came in and said, I don't think so. They put a stop to it. Newsom basically said now gay activists and gay right leaders and lesbians have to fight a different battleground that's in the workplace and in the church to get equal rights. How do you see it?
Right. Well, there's this in virtually every country and state that's legalized gay marriage. I was living in the first state to legalize in Massachusetts, in the court decision there. And what happened immediately was various kind of gay rights activists started going after Catholic Charities, which were an adoption agency, which refused to place children with gay couples because of their religious faith. And virtually in every instance, we see attacks on the church afterwards. We obviously saw that in 2008 here in California, where we saw attacks on the Mormon church, graffiti and the like. The real interesting question is what comes next. My bet is that when they start making a lot of these laws about hiring decisions, it's going to have an interesting effect on the labor market for gays.
Hang on, caller.
The easiest group to hire right now is also the easiest group to fire, which are white males, and that's not coincidental. Because of what ends up happening is if you add more laws, if you're an employer, as I am, you end up being put in an awkward position, because sometimes you're less likely to take certain people because of the lawsuit that could come about, the civil rights lawsuit. So it's a difficult kind of bind that gays are going to find themselves in if those laws go into effect.
Well, what about those people that don't want to provide services to same-sex couples, like wedding photographers, maybe churches? They don't want to employ gays or lesbians. How do you stop that?
Yeah, my general view is that you either have freedom of association or you don't. And we had that case in Indiana of basically the the Hicks who owned the pizza place who didn't want to hypothetically cater a gay wedding. And my view is it's much more dangerous when you have monopolies like Twitter, Google, and so forth, Amazon censoring content, censoring those types of things, than when you have a competitive marketplace like your pizza places, your wedding shops, that kind of thing.
Yeah, quickly, caller, we got to go to break, but what's your question?
Just very quickly, response to your guest, the journalist needs to do his research if he's going to present himself as an expert before Obamacare. Only between the age under 21 and over 65. Between 21 and 65, you were not eligible. You had to go to the Darren Caribbean Ambulatory Care Center clinic run by Fresno Community Hospital. You saw a different doctor every time, and you received no services.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would just say in general, there are people who are under the law right now. The reason we had to have Obamacare was that there was a federal law that made it that when you showed up at a hospital, the hospital had to treat you, which of course was extremely expensive. Many people, particularly illegal immigrants and others, were going into hospitals and oftentimes for things that were minor, and that was costing the state and the taxpayer lots more money. And so the solution, of course, was, and by the way, Mitt Romney was one of the first to propose this solution in Romney Care. In fact, I joked this week, the Heritage Foundation, the Conservative Heritage Foundation, gave us Romney Care and Obamacare, and the Federalist Society, which is a conservative law society, gave us John Roberts. So it's sort of a failure of sort of institutional conservatism this past week.
All right, Charles C. Johnson, internet journalist, is here, and we're going to continue with your phone calls. 436-METV, option 11. An incredible week last week, historic week to say the least, with 2 decisions coming down by the court, and another one concerning the Confederate flag. Back in just a moment.
At 2020 Optometric, your vision is their focus. Whether you're 5 or 65, Dr. Thomas Casagrande will get to know you, your lifestyle, and vision needs to ensure that your contacts or eyeglasses are a perfect fit and the right prescription every time. With the Valley's largest selection of eyewear, 2020 has over 2,000 frames, including top designer brands like Coach, Tiffany, Prada, Ray-Ban, Oakley, and more. Eye exams start as low as $89, so call or stop by to schedule your appointment today.
Back here on the program, talking about Obamacare, talking about, of course, same-sex marriage. And I want to put up the picture of Hillary Clinton because she is running for president, obviously. And how is this same-sex marriage ruling and Obamacare, how is that going to benefit her, or will it?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, she's one of the few candidates that virulently was against gay marriage. I guess in 2008, there are a number of clips circulating of her being against it. And about 2 weeks ago, she released a video saying how much she was in favor of it. I guess most of her policy items are dictated by polling. I think it's going to be interesting because for the conservative candidates on the Republican side, and it seems virtually every Republican in the country is running for president right now, but on the conservative side, the states are staggered in a way that it's Iowa, South Carolina, and then the Super Tuesday, Super Southern Tuesday, which are all southern states. And it's going to be interesting to see which candidate addresses the issue.
Yeah, she looks very presidential in that picture right there.
So.
But how is that going to fare in some of the southern states like South Carolina, like you said? Is her message going to fly, or are people going to bring up, hey, look, you've changed your mind, and you basically put your finger in the air and say, to see which way the wind is blowing. Isn't that what she does?
Well, that's what a lot of politicians do, but she does it probably more cravenly than others, maybe. I mean, that would be sort of the argument that people make against her.
So will her message in the South be different than in the North?
It has been before. She's affected a sort of black accent when she's gone and speak in South Carolina churches. I mean, people have seen this. I mean, I'm not speaking out of school on this.
Yeah, no, I know, I remember.
Yeah, and so she's an interesting character. I mean, you can kind of trust the Clintons to be sort of a chameleon in nature. But it's gonna be an interesting fight. I know that there are a number of candidates right now on the Republican side who are kind of debating what to do on the question of gay marriage, and then again what to do on the question of the Confederate flag, which is still a source of some contention. There are a number of rallies that have broken out all throughout the South in favor of the flag.
So will she go to South Carolina and rail against the flag, the Confederate flag?
It's a good question. I don't think she's actually even offered a statement at this stage on the flag.
No, she hasn't.
So I don't know what she'll do. It's maybe that will make that much more interesting.
But it's pretty much a foregone conclusion when she comes to California or goes to Massachusetts. I'm sure she will tout gay marriage.
Well, you can watch if she's dropping. You should watch her accent for what the policies are going to be, I guess. I don't know. I mean, she'll, of course, tout it, and a lot of other Republicans, Rand Paul said nothing, which is kind of interesting. Nothing favorable, nothing negative. It's going to be interesting. In Iowa, this last cycle, they actually recalled a number of the judges who voted in favor of gay marriage. So obviously it's not something that they necessarily favor there.
Yeah. Jeb Bush, let's put up a picture of him because he had something to say over the weekend about the two rulings. Hey, he said basically, okay, the decisions have been made. I may not agree with them, but life moves on.
It's an interesting approach for Jeb Bush. I mean, he's obviously one of the more moderate, maybe even left-wing of the Republicans who've entered the race. If he's hoping to rally the troops, I don't think that's necessarily the smartest thing to say. There have been many cases of the Supreme Court getting the issue wrong, all the way back to Korematsu, where they interned Japanese Americans here in California, going back to Dred Scott. And there's a long history, actually, of presidential candidates running against Supreme Court decisions, which ultimately leads to them winning the day, or winning the election, and then ultimately changing the politics.
What about Christie? He's going to announce tomorrow he's going to run for president. Another Republican throwing his hat in the ring. Unbelievable.
Well, I'm quite surprised, although he has a very big backer, Ken Langone, who's of Home Depot fortune. So every time you shop at Home Depot, you're in some measure helping Chris Christie's electoral prospects.
Really?
But Christie has a long history of corruption, which not just the Bridgegate. There's going to be other stuff that comes out, particularly his time as assistant U.S. attorney.
Can you give us any nuggets?
Well, his relationship with Michelle Brown, which was his deputy, was a source of some contention and controversy at the time.
A little affair going on
there? There was
the
affair. There was the money changing hands. And this was pre-lap band surgery, so it's quite interesting. But I think Christie will be an interesting source of jokes for late-night comedians, but I don't know how far he goes. He's quite, a lot of Republicans don't like him after he bear-hugged Barack Obama during the Hurricane Sandy.
That was the kiss of death, basically.
Yeah, well, it's going to make for very interesting political ads. I'd say.
I don't know. He's already released the video last night on a new website. I didn't get a chance to see it. I saw snippets.
Telling
of
it like it is his slogan.
That's right.
I don't know what it is, but I guess President Clinton might be able to help us on this question. Or he famously defined it at that point.
Hey, we're going to talk about Twitter and being banned from Twitter. You ever been banned from Twitter? I haven't. I'm on Twitter, and I hardly put anything on there, but if people want to tweet me, they can. 436-MeTV, option 11. We're back with our guest, Charles C. Johnson, in just a moment.
You can find movies on over-the-air channel 13.3. Movies. Our name says it all.
The Ballad of Andy and Barney. Andy and Barney were lawmen, bravest you ever did see. Warned every crook in the record book to stay out of Mayberry. They were the law.
Yes, they were the law, and they didn't know fear.
The Andy Griffith Show.
I guess to sum it up, you could say there's 3 reasons why there's so little crime in Mayberry. There's Andy, and there's me, and baby makes 3.
Now on MeTV Fresno.
Hey, back here on the program. Hey, so who is the Barney Fife of the Republican Party? Who would you say, out of all the candidates running, who's the one person that can shoot him or herself in the foot?
Well, I think
Donald Trump.
I think Donald Trump might fit the category, but it's interesting. I don't see how Trump loses, because we're all talking about him. He gets all this free publicity for his brand.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like celebrity, who wants to be the president, kind of attitude. And
yeah.
I kind of, it's interesting when his long kind of rambling speech where he got the governments of China and Mexico to respond. And that's sort of power. I mean, he's got 3 million Twitter followers. It's the largest of any of the candidates, and
It's unbelievable.
I think he's a really impressive all-American figure that you couldn't invent him if you wanted to.
No,
I mean, he's,
there he is right there.
he's so
Hey,
generous.
I love that. You're fired, Charles. There he is.
Yeah.
Anyway, Donald Trump didn't have much to say on Sunday when pressed about the issue. I believe this was on CNN when somebody pressed him about his 3 traditional marriages that went down the tubes, comparing that to gay marriage. And, you know, so the question was asked, hey, what would you say if a gay man came up to you and said, hey, look at your 3 failed marriages? And Trump, he really kind of dropped the ball. He said, well, you'd have a good point. I mean, that's all he said.
Well, at least he's honest. I mean, that's one of the first times I've seen Donald Trump be self-reflective.
And speechless.
No, I mean, to a certain extent, the ultra-wealthy kind of date and marry differently than the rest of us. So sometimes it's a more economic affair than necessarily a love affair. I think the gay marriage issue largely was a foregone conclusion when we started making marriage about romantic love rather than arranged marriages, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
And when that started to happen, it was just going to happen. I think the thing that I saw that was most interesting about the gay marriage thing is now there are all these groups who are calling for polygamy because they're saying, you know, we love our wives just as much. And I think that's probably the next civil rights issue. And I think it'll be interesting to see how many people go for that.
Yeah. Trump also criticized for taking shots at Mexican immigrants, saying that they are criminals, they are druggies, they are rapists. Mexico is sending us the worst of the worst. Trump is part owner of the Miss USA pageant. Univision says on July 12th they will not carry the pageant based on those comments. So
yes, and he retaliated by kicking them off of his golf course and by banning the construction of a gate that the 2 properties share. So it's going to be. I'm looking forward to pass the popcorn. I mean, I'm looking forward to that fight. But no, Trump I think was actually correct. If you look at the,
So was he being honest?
Oh yeah, none of the states except for New York and a few others actually. None of the major ones actually carry the statistics about illegal immigrant crime or legal immigrant crime in the U.S.
But not everyone that crosses the border is a criminal or a druggie or a rapist.
No,
right?
but when I saw that, what he was talking about was that they are disproportionately that way. And if we look at the numbers, most of the drunk driving incidents in California are often with illegal immigrants, often with way disproportionate to their numbers. So I think that was the point he was trying to make.
You're agreeing with Trump?
I'm not necessarily agreeing with the way in which he said it, because I don't necessarily, I'm not exactly a big fan of Donald Trump's tactlessness, but I do think that there is a serious problem about crime that's come to the United States. In fact, Mexico actually gives a deal to some of its criminals, and they say you can either go to a prison here or we can send you to the United States, and many of them choose that option.
So you think the majority of the Mexican immigrants that come here from Mexico are criminals?
I wouldn't say the majority, but I would say a disproportionate number relative to their population.
What does that mean?
So the way I would look at it is I would say, like, if you look at the Asian immigrants that come to the United States, they commit fewer crimes than the native-born population.
Or the Irish, or the Italian.
I don't know about those numbers, but I just know among the Asians we know that to be true.
Okay.
If you look at the Latin American ones, in some of these cultures, I don't blame them because they don't even have laws banning having sex with children under 16, like in Guatemala. Those laws don't exist. If you look at drunk driving laws, those don't exist in a lot of Latin America. So their cultures are very different. They come here to the United States. They commit certain crimes that wouldn't be crimes back in the old country or wouldn't be policed. And so, yeah, I think he may have been onto something, but not in quite the way in which he phrased it.
All right, got to take a break here on Connect with Me, talking with Charles C. Johnson of, actually, do we have a phone call? We do. Okay, all right. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, I would like to respond to what Charles said about immigrants coming across from Mexico and the majority of them being so-called, in drugs and killings and whatnot.
We didn't say the majority. That was Donald Trump that said the majority. I was saying that relative to the general population of Americans, the disproportionately high numbers. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, but you agreed in the sense that most of it, or the majority of them come across have some kind of a crime background. And, that's fine to say. But if you know someone that does that, well, that's fine to say. but it's going to give you a bad little taste there from people like myself and whatever, you know, African Americans and Asians or whatever, you know. I respect. You know, I respect you.
Well, let me be clear about it, because I think there's some confusion here. Obviously, most of the people who are immigrants to this country, including my wife, are not criminals. But there is a policy in Mexico, as there are in a number of other Latin American countries, of sending people who are criminals to the United States, and we see that reflected in a higher DUI rate. We see that reflected in a higher crime rate, predominantly in minority areas, and oftentimes those crimes aren't even reported to the authorities. So we have seen this. We've seen this certainly in the case of in New York State, for instance. Even though New York is not one of the states that has that many Mexicans or many Latin Americans relative to California and Texas,
they have Puerto Ricans there.
They have Puerto Ricans. But if you look at their prisons, disproportionate numbers of Mexicans are incarcerated there. Now, whether that's because the prison system is racist against the Mexicans or whether it's because they commit crimes disproportionately, I leave to more expert people to say. But no, certainly I don't believe that a majority of Mexicans are criminals, not by any stretch. And so, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that.
Go ahead, caller.
Oh, that's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, and you know what? As far as Donald Trump, he's not gonna. He's got the money to burn in one up, but he's not gonna get anywhere in the top 10. They've got so many people anyway. No. But I think the only two people that I believe, individuals that have a chance of being the president, I mean, you know, to go that, it's going to be Jeb Bush and Ron Paul. Those two people, I think. The rest of them, put them aside.
No,
and the reason I think
caller, I think Hillary has a shot too.
Who's that?
Hillary Clinton has a shot too. You got to give her a chance.
Oh no. Well, I'm saying like Republicans.
Okay.
Hillary, nobody's going to touch her anyway. And then with the same-sex marriage going through and all that, they're going to back her up.
Yeah.
You know, and the majority will.
Yeah.
And no other Republican is going to come near her.
Okay. All righty. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate the phone call very much. 436 MeTV option 11. Back with Charles C. Johnson in just a moment.
At 2020 Optometric, your vision is their focus. Whether you're 5 or 65, Dr. Thomas Casagrande will get to know you, your lifestyle, and vision needs to ensure that your contacts or eyeglasses are a perfect fit and the right prescription every time. With the Valley's largest selection of eyewear, 2020 has over 2,000 frames, including top designer brands like Coach, Tiffany, Prada, Ray-Ban, Oakley, and more. Eye exams start as low as $89, so call or stop by to schedule your appointment today.
In one of the most highly anticipated decisions of the year, the Supreme Court Thursday upheld the nationwide tax subsidies critical to President Barack Obama's health care overhaul. The 6-3 decision effectively preserves health care for millions of Americans. Reaction was swift. From supporters, including the president.
But as the dust has settled, there can be no doubt that this law is working. It has changed and in some cases saved American lives.
And opponents.
The problem with Obamacare is still fundamentally the same. The law is broken. It's raising costs for American families. It's raising costs for small businesses.
The justices said the subsidies that roughly 8.7 million people currently get to make insurance affordable do not depend on the state they live in, as challengers had contended. Over 6 million of those were at risk of losing those subsidies because they live in states that had not set up their own health insurance exchanges. Texas is one of those states.
We're the state that has the most number of people who are uninsured or underinsured. So this really makes it easier for us to continue those efforts to help people live healthier lives.
It seems like, it feels like there's some permanency to this now. So patients who are eligible to move into the exchanges can now move into those exchanges without fear of that being pulled out from under them?
Pennsylvania, another state that would have been impacted.
Had they gone the other way, something close to 350,000 Pennsylvanians would have probably dropped their health insurance coverage.
Although not everyone is happy with the court's decision.
Basically, the problem still remains, and that's people are not able to access affordable and quality health care. And this ruling continues that unfortunate problem.
Thursday's ruling is the second major Supreme Court victory for Obama on the Affordable Care Act.
I think this means that the Affordable Care Act is here to stay.
Chief Justice John Roberts again voted in favor. Antonin Scalia, Samuel Alito, and Clarence Thomas were in the dissent. Jill Craig, Associated Press.
A decisive victory for the president, 6-3. Wasn't quite like the same-sex marriage decision the following day. We do have a call. Go ahead. You're on the air, caller.
Yes. I just want to say that with Donald Trump's statement, he wouldn't be at all a good president because he lacks the tact. But the thing is that when he said it, he should have thought a lot longer. Because what he said was, I don't want to have the Hispanic vote if I, am in the running. And what he did is just commit political assassination to himself.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for the call very much. I appreciate that. 436 MeTV option 11. Give me a comment about that 6-3 decision on Obamacare, and also about what the caller said about Donald Trump. We'll kill two birds with one stone here.
Well, I mean, obviously the 6-3 decision isn't as surprising. Usually what happens is if there's a break of a 5-4, usually what happens is there are concurring opinions or slightly modified opinions, and I think that's what happened here. What's going to be interesting is whether or not this now spills back into the legislature. I mean, obviously the Republicans control the House and the Senate. They officially say they're opposed to Obamacare, whether or not that happens or not. And as for Donald Trump, I don't think Donald Trump cares much what I say or much what the caller says or much what anyone says other than Donald Trump.
Well, he's got the money. So he doesn't care about anything.
No, he doesn't care. And to a certain extent, I kind of admire that. I mean, there are many billionaires in this country. At least one of them has the audacity
to talk
or to go and go and run and make his views known and so forth. I just wonder how it's going to affect his brand by the time he's done with it, because he's certainly alienating a lot of people. But he's also getting a lot of press for himself, and that's what he's shown a tendency to do.
And maybe he should pick Rosie O'Donnell for his running mate.
Well, he said Oprah. Oprah was the one he thought.
I think he should go with Rosie.
Maybe.
They're the perfect couple. All right, caller, go ahead.
Hey, yes, I was wondering, why hasn't anybody talked about Vice President
Joe Biden?
Whoever he is. Yeah, that was a joke.
That's a good question. Yeah, why hasn't anybody talked about Joe Biden running for president?
Well, Joe Biden has met with a number of top donors. Both of his sons, including his now deceased son, wanted him to run for president, and he's certainly still talking with people about running. I think you could very easily see Joe Biden run and maybe even give Hillary a run for her money. He's certainly very popular among working class white voters. He's also very popular among kind of more, even among young voters. He may be more popular than she is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I'd certainly like to see him in the race, if only for comedic effect, because he has a tendency, like Donald Trump, to say some more outlandish things.
Right. I want to put the picture up of you, and I do want to talk about the church shooting and the Confederate flag after the break, but I want to put up the shot of you on Twitter.
Sure.
Censorship?
Yes,
to the highest degree, and why?
So I was removed from Twitter. They haven't given me a reason yet. People have speculated about why they removed me, and this is a thing that's been condemned by people on the left and the right, civil libertarians, as well as people who are
what did you do,
kind of
Charles?
on the far right. I said that I was planning to take out DeRay McKesson in terms of a research project. The phrase "take out" was deliberately interpreted
as
in
shooting.
a violent way, even though Slate, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, Labor, Washington Examiner, a number of other publications have used that same formulation. And so what ended up happening, DeRay McKesson, who is one of the leaders in the Black Lives Matters movement, he has a history of kind of criminality and of violence himself. He's a very good friend of Jack Dorsey, who's now the interim CEO of Twitter. And this gives Twitter an opportunity to say that they're cleaning up their platform by getting rid of the trolls, which they include me and a number of others, And it's going to be interesting. We're hitting them with an FCC complaint. We may also hit them with a lawsuit as well, because they have no due process. They have no one seriously, not even DeRay McKesson, believes that I was planning to assassinate him. He didn't contact law enforcement. He didn't.
He's just, so McKesson is just trying to shut you down.
Correct. Yeah, he's just trying to censor me. Yeah.
Yeah, and Twitter's censoring you.
Yes, Twitter. I mean, DeRay McKesson is good friends with Jack Dorsey, who's now the CEO. I mean,
How do they know each other?
Well, Dorsey was very fascinated at the use of Twitter to instigate these riots and to instigate a lot of the disruptions we've seen in Baltimore, Ferguson, a number of other places.
New York.
New York, obviously. So that's why they know each other, and it's going to be interesting. Twitter obviously has a serious earnings problem. I've talked to a number of short sellers who want to talk to me about some of the data that I have, because Twitter's priced way below IPO right now, and there are a lot of people who think there's a tech bubble right now about to burst.
How are you getting your message out then?
I'm using my website. I'm using other means. I'm kind of enjoying
Facebook?
Somewhat of the vacation, frankly. I'm working on my book, which I'm shopping around to various publishers right now and competing offers. And I also, when I was in D.C., I was meeting with a billionaire who wants to fund my next startup, which will be a much more interesting kind of news approach, but we can kind of talk about that as it gets closer to finaling.
What new approach is that?
Basically, my view is that the future is less advertising-based journalism and much more, I want this, I'm paying this to get it. And so a lot more gamification of the news, sort of turning the production of news much more into a video game. And so I've been shopping that around to, I've met with now 5 or 6 different billionaires and kind of formalizing business plans and kind of going with that.
So a different way of putting the news out is what you're saying.
Basically, like, as radio went to TV, TV went to the internet, this is what I think the next platform is going to be, which is...
You like a video game?
Kind of, yeah. So what you would do is, let's say you had money and you wanted me to research X topic. You would put the money into the fund, and then what we would do is we would set up a game or a bounty to go and find that information out there, and we would reward people who found that information, be they the crowd, be they journalists like like me, what have you. And so that's kind of what we've been designing right now.
It's almost like being a bounty hunter to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Okay. Charles C. Johnson is here from gotnews.com. He is an internet journalist. You can go to his website and find out what the latest goings-on there around the country are. And you are encouraged to call in at 436-MEET-TV, option 11. Back in a moment.
Want to create something extraordinary? Create perfection. Our lifestyle appliances make it easy. KitchenAid, Ventura TV appliance, and you, when only the best will do.
We need help to find this missing child. Erica Parsons was 13 when she disappeared. She was last seen in Salisbury, North Carolina in November of 2011. This is what we believe she looks like today at age 16. If you have any information, please call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. That's 1-800-843-5678.
Dylan Roof, a 21-year-old white man, is accused of shooting and killing 9 black churchgoers at a Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina. Police documents saying he screamed racial tirades and rained hellfire with a handgun and a house of solace.
Never once did he say, I don't like black people, I'm going to go kill black people.
Yet friends say he found peace here at a mobile home park in Lexington, 2 hours northwest, making friends with people of color.
He'd still come over here by himself and talk to me and hang out with me. I'm black. Clear as day, I'm black.
People like Christian Scriven, who says they would party together.
Just one night, we all got drunk together, and then since then, me and Dylan was just homeboys, just chilled every day.
And he says sometimes when Roof was drunk, he would talk about his plans.
He just said that he was gonna hurt a bunch of people at the University of Charleston.
Scriven says Roof talked openly of harming others, presumably at the College of Charleston, and even set a date for action.
He just said in 7 days, they all got 7 days, and that was on last week Wednesday, and then Wednesday coming, he shot all these people in the church.
Scriven says friends knew Roof had a gun.
It was a Glock 45 with a high-point beam on it, laser beam.
And adds sometimes when he said crazy things, the friends would hide it.
Like, we all took his gun from him. We took his gun and we took it in the house and put it in the air vent.
It was there for like 2 days, and my brother's girlfriend said just give it back to him because my brother can't have a firearm because he's on probation and everything.
Roof's pals only connected with him in the last several months. Last they knew, he was a high school dropout. They didn't know about his brush with the law earlier this year when he was arrested for trespassing and drug possession in nearby Columbia. They say he would stay at the mobile home park more often than with his parents.
For like 3 days, 4 days, and leave again, come back like another week.
I know that for a fact that him and his mom and dad had problems.
Christian Scriven is well aware of the incongruity of this story.
I still love him as a friend, no matter what, because, I mean, he was my friend.
That he's friends with Dylan Roof.
What is your age? 21.
Who's now being accused of targeting and killing people because of their skin color. John Moan, Associated Press, Lexington, South Carolina.
All right, the reason they're talking about banning the Confederate flag is mainly because of this shooting incident that killed 9 people in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. The president has come out again against gun violence. He said this is the ultimate in racism across the country. The Confederate flag needs to come down because it's a reminder of what this country went through. What say you?
I say no. I say if you look at the stats on murders and rapes, the numbers are way disproportionate of blacks killing whites as opposed to whites killing blacks. In fact, there were something like 30,000 rapes when the Justice Department still took statistics on this. Eric Holder has now banned interracial crime statistics. There were something like 30,000 whites that were raped by blacks as opposed to 10 blacks that were raped by whites. If we're looking at just the violent crime, it's not a pretty PC picture. And when it comes to the Confederate flag, I think it's a bad idea to kind of remove symbols as if you're removing the thought itself. If you look at all the destruction that we've seen of the various Civil War memorials, it's kind of it reminds me more of ISIS or of the brown shirts of Nazi Germany destroying property and trying to make people feel unwelcome.
Put up the picture of Clementa Pinckney one more time. He is the pastor in the church that was gunned down. He invited the man in, and after an hour, he shot him. Isn't this the guy? Basically, he is the symbol of the takedown of the Confederate flag.
Yes, and I think what's interesting about this is that if you look at other racist incidents that have occurred, such as the shooting in Wisconsin that occurred where the Sikhs were gunned down, usually when there's a racist white nationalist thing, they don't have black friends, so that's a little strange. Dylan Roof's family has a history of schizophrenia. 21 is usually the age of onset.
Didn't they buy him a gun at the age of 21?
They didn't buy him a gun, they gave him the cash, and he went and bought the gun.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what I think happened here is he was there for over an hour, and I think he just had a psychotic break, and that's what happened. I know that's a minority view, but I think his manifesto that was released was also kind of interesting because so much of it was plagiarized from other sources. Right. And what was the most interesting part of it is he said he wasn't a racist when he was growing up, but it was the Trayvon Martin situation where the president was making and pushing that in a racist direction.
That's what encouraged him.
And that's what he was responding to.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's a really dangerous thing because it shows the extent to which when the president intervenes in these situations, he might actually cause more harm than good among deranged individuals.
Got 2 minutes left. Put up the picture of Brian Williams. We have a series of them now. He's going to go to MSNBC. He'll keep his job, but he won't keep the seat as nightly news anchor. I don't know, is he a disgraced anchorman, would you say?
I don't know. You know, my team worked on...
There we are on the moon.
My team and I worked on him, on basically bringing him down and exposing his lies about Hurricane Katrina. What I want to know is, does he have to turn back his $50 million signing bonus? I mean, that's kind of what I want to know. I mean,
I don't know.
It doesn't seem like a big deal to lose your job and then go and get another job for being a serial, fibber. But, more power to him. I mean, this is a country of second chances, and so I guess we'll see what ends up happening to him. But it's hard to take him seriously
now. The New York escapees. All right, Richard Matt shot dead on Friday. He was shot 3 times in the head. Let's put up the pictures one more time. And Matt is on the right. David Sweat caught I guess either late last night or this morning, he was shot in the stomach but captured alive. They were on the lam for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, good. I mean, I know it's terrible to say this, but it's like something out of a movie. You know,
It really is.
It's not quite the Shawshank Redemption. Obviously, people have drawn comparisons to that, but it is quite similar.
Almost. Hey, out of time, Charles. Always glad when you're here, and I hope you win your battle against Twitter.
Thank you. Well, I'm engaged in another lawsuit now, and I think we're going to win that one too.
Which one is that? Quickly.
We're suing Gawker for making up a number of things. It's a media publication making up a number of things about me, and so should be fun. Me and Hulk Hogan are suing Gawker separately, but sort of together in a way.
Gotta go. Jim Belcher is here tomorrow. He is the owner of Christina's Natural Ranch Market. We'll talk about GMOs, good or bad. Thanks to Charles C. Johnson. We'll see you again soon. See you tomorrow. Have a great day. Remember, stay cool, my friends.